Welcome to DMM Downloads. We are podcasting another conversation about DMM between Jeff Crabtree and me, Rudy Rivera. Jeff and I are teamed together in Northern Colorado in a ministry we call DMM NOCO. DMM NOCO is unleashing disciple-making movements in Northern Colorado, and we thought it a good idea to start a podcast as a way to bring awareness and resourcing to ordinary people who are passionate about making multiplying disciple makers in our natural networks. Thanks for joining us in this journey. We hope you get a DMM download from this conversation. We're back.
Hi, Rudy.
Hey, and Jeff and I have actually been talking off audio. I was going to say off camera, but we don't have a camera set up. Jeff and I have been talking about, movement found us. What did that feel like? What was happening? What did that feel like? How did that impact us? What were our doubts, fears, questions, excitements? And so we're in episode 2 of Disciple Making Movement Downloads. Jeff and I are talking again. Welcome back. Settle in with a cup of coffee, maybe. We don't have coffee here today.
We already had our cups.
We already had our cups this morning. We meet up with some other people here in Northern Colorado Tuesday mornings. But anyhow, recording on Tuesday afternoon. Jeff and I have just been talking. We said, we got to record this. Jeff, tell us, what were you feeling? Is that where you were going, I think?
Yeah, well, Rudy, we laugh about this. I'm getting ready to turn 66, so I feel like I'm an old guy, so I can't always remember what happened yesterday, let alone 7+ years ago. But I think for all of us, we have a journey, we have a testimony, we have a story. And I'd like to say that when we think about movement found us rather than we found movement, it's like Jesus captured my attention in a new way. Jesus captured your attention in a different way. And so I'm trying to go back there and think about that. I think, again, like I said, that I didn't really know there was another way to do church. I didn't know there was another way to gospel. I didn't know there was another way to be faithful to the Lord and the Great Commission than the model that I had been taught. And so I go back to say I didn't know it then, but I know it now, that I was having to, and again, the book I mentioned, Spent Matches by Roy Moran, caused me to ask questions that I didn't like to ask. They were uncomfortable. He was presenting things to me that were outside of my comfort zone, my wheelhouse, my model of Western Christianity. And like I said, I didn't know it then, I know it now. Those questions that needed to be asked and answered were the process of me to unlearn so that I could relearn. And I can see it now. I couldn't see it then. And there's some probably listening to us that they're going to have to kind of go through that same process, or they might want to go through that same process. Maybe they won't want to go through that same process, that we have to be confronted with some questions that are uncomfortable. And again, being 40 years almost in senior pastor role, building attractional legacy churches, whatever you want to call them, is it working? Now, don't get me wrong. I came to the Lord in the late 70s and on the back ends of the Jesus movement, and I got saved in that model, and people got saved in that model. So I'm not saying that God isn't sovereign and that He didn't work. But here's kind of the challenge I had, Rudy, is it all about salvation? Now, everybody on the broadcast probably going to go crazy for me to even ask that question, because we've so emphasized it in Western culture, it's about salvation. Well, yes and no. The point is, we usually talk about salvation in the sense what we got saved from. But do we ask the questions, what did we get saved to? What did we get saved for? It's kind of like in Western Christianity, at least in my life and planting churches and everything, is that we just focused on getting saved from sin, getting saved from hell, getting saved from eternal damnation. But you've heard me probably say that I had to be confronted with, if you will, are we presenting only the benefits package? Or is there more to that? Is there really a job description?
Job description.
Which, again, leaning more fully into the Great Commission, said we're to go, and as we're going, as saved people, as disciples, as followers of Jesus, make other disciples. And I really had never caught that. So you know me, I'm rambling.
That's good.
But I think those were the early days in thinking about that. I had to unlearn that maybe Jesus had more on his mind and intended for us than simply raise your hand, come forward, get saved. Because I'll kind of end this and pass it back over to you, Rudy, is I had pastored almost 40 years, and we'd seen people saved. I'm not sure we'd seen a lot of people transformed. And we didn't see a lot of people that said, okay, from that salvation, I want to receive God's heart and go share it in any legitimate way with lost neighbors, coworkers, strangers. I just didn't see that, and maybe that was my fault in being a leader, but I think it's pretty typical of Western Christianity, and I think I have some place to say about that because I now am into my 46th year of full-time ministry in a Western context. So, what do you think? What hits you about some of that?
Yeah, that just reminds me of so many things, but I think where my mind is gone hearing your story is back to what I said in episode 1, which is when you started talking with me about DMM, it felt familiar. But what the Lord's been showing me recently, and I shared this with some friends a week ago or so, what the Lord's been showing me was him connecting more of the dots of my life. And so a couple of things. When I got saved in the Catholic Church, altar boy camp, San Antonio, Texas, came to know the Lord, gave my heart to Jesus, used the language you want to use there. My parents soon thereafter moved us away from the Catholic Church. And through a long series of, I think a few years, I can't quite remember, landed in a Southern Baptist church. And I remember telling my new youth group, I'll never be Baptist. Because if I was going to be religious, I would just stay Catholic. No offense to any Catholics listening. It really had to do with my own personal journey that I had seen my religion, just the religious acts, not take me very far. But I had now come to know the living God in a personal way. And I was like, this is dynamic. This is life. Even as a kid, I could tell the difference. So I didn't want to be religious anymore. And I just believed, well, I'm in a new church, but it doesn't mean I can't just fall back into religion. So that was my way of saying, I don't want to be religious. And that was one of the dots the Lord showed me when you and I started talking about DMM. It's like, wow, it's not rejecting religion or my expression of church or anything, but it is calling into question effectiveness or spirit-led, decision-making in life. So for me, that was one of the early pieces. Second to that, I already told you, I became involved in a Great Commission church. And so the Great Commission was always being talked about. And I remember being in the dorms at the University of Texas which you love. I know you love.
Yeah, I'm an Okie.
Yeah,
Go Oklahoma.
Yeah, Josh
Boomer Sooner.
Jeff likes Boomer Sooner, and I'm a Texas fan, so the Lord has brought us together. But anyhow, sitting in those dorms with some really great friends of mine, we're still good friends. Young men praying, dreaming, talking, even planning for where are we going to go plant churches? How are we going to see this turned around in our lifetime? And over the years, we all grew up and scattered and didn't stay together. And to my knowledge, none of us really went out and planted a lot of churches, and definitely not together. Third dot of my life, the Lord showing me how He was going to use us to build churches. Because I was an architecture major, and I remember telling my home church, I was going off to the university to build churches. And I was thinking buildings.
Sure.
But I think it was a prophetic word. Even though I didn't really mean it as a kid, I was kind of telling them what I knew they wanted to hear. But also look back at that and go, wow, the Lord redeemed that. And He put it on my heart. Churches and making disciples. So for me, I've been kind of going back 30, 40 years in my life and going, oh, the Lord's been like sowing this into me for years in different ways. So my question when we started talking about DMM was a little bit like, am I missing something? Like, so I called up, I don't know if you know this, but I called up people I trust in the mission field and said, you guys have been overseas. Tell me about DMM. Have you heard of DMM and what it's all about? And across the board, they said, oh yeah, it's awesome.
Wow.
But the question was not, they literally said, yeah, it's biblical. But the question was, does it work in North America?
Yeah, sure.
And I was like, well, I don't know, but it's helpful to hear from you men that I trust that it's biblical. So then at that point, I was like, okay, I want to lean in and learn more about this. And in some ways, it was a relearning. In some ways, it's been an unlearning. But that was one of my first fears was, okay, this all it's hard to I always say, it's hard to argue with read the Bible, obey, and pray. It's just like, it's pretty simple stuff. And I'm like, okay, Jesus said this, and then, but why is it scary? Why am I afraid of this? I need to double check this. Maybe this Jeff guy is just kind of crazy. I thought he was a good guy, but it turns out he's crazy. No.
Yeah.
Boy, all these people going, boy, it's right there in the scriptures, but why isn't it working here? And so that's what I've been leaning into is like, well, I'm a North American.
Right.
I've been a quote-unquote missionary in North America for 20 years now, over 20 years. So, yeah, like what's going on in North America that we've been caught? I'm going to say that plainly, I guess, but at least I'll speak for me. Maybe I've been caught a tad bit at least in that place that I said as a kid I never wanted to be.
Sure. Because
I don't want to be religious.
Right.
I've seen that part of my life. I've saw what it did with my parents, seen it in my own life. But maybe that's the gravitational pull in North America is be religious. And I don't. That's weird to say. I don't think I've ever said that before. Maybe I'm wrong. So Jeff,
and maybe
help me out, bro.
Maybe we're all a little more religious than we think we are. That'd be something for us to download and ponder. And since we're just getting this started, we admit that we're just brainstorming. We're just I'm a verbal brainstormer.
Yeah, me too.
Verbal processor. So our audience, those listening, that this isn't all really crafted and thought through and shaped well and presented. We're just, again, learning. But yeah, I would say whatever time we have left on this podcast was we both have different backgrounds and we both have different stories. And yet Almighty God has captured us, and for reasons unknown to us, maybe a bit of wound or skepticism or discouragement that ministry or what we had hoped in ministry hasn't fully panned out, or maybe it's just that we are in a unique time of human history and even a North American or Western culture that God's doing something. But He's got a lot of entry points, but something's different, something's new. Those of us that have committed our lives to Christ many years ago and been involved laboring in ministry in Western Christianity, the local church as we know it, something's missing. Mm-hmm. And again, for me, and we can maybe share this on another podcast, was are we in the harvest field? Mm-hmm. Do we have a care for the lost? If we say in the movement world, put a circle around some area of lostness and own it, be responsible for that. Mm-hmm. That language, that mentality was never a part of what I was trained to do to build local church in a Western context. Mm-hmm. And like I said, we probably share this on another one, is Jesus said He came to seek and save the lost. That wasn't, I'm not saying I didn't care about the lost, but I probably hadn't fully leaned into that reality. So mm-hmm. Just the point today is that wherever you might be, if you're listening to this podcast in the religious spectrum, I don't think this is a denominational thing. I think this is an individual capturing of the heart of God for followers of Jesus to lean in, to maybe ask hard questions and answer them, to unlearn, to possibly relearn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's well said, and let's end it there for this episode. Wow, Jeff. This is helping
Thanks,
me
Rudy.
kind of process.
We're learning.
We are verbal processors, guys. So thanks for joining us for this episode. We'll be back in a week with another download. Thanks, Jeff, for that engaging download. In DMM, we like to say that disciples are learners. I know I'm learning a lot from my conversations with you, Jeff. From all of us in DMM NOCO, we hope you got a DMM download from the conversation today. Don't forget to leave this podcast a review wherever you are listening online. If you found this conversation helpful, please head over to our site, dmmnoco.com, where you can find more content for your DMM journey, including a self-paced Habits of a Multiplying Disciple course. The course is designed to give you practical next steps to becoming a DMM practitioner and multiplying disciple maker. You can take that course for free at dmmnoco.com. We will be back next week with another engaging DMM download episode. Until then, may you hear from God through His Spirit and take simple steps of obedience in what you hear.